They can be used to get a listing. Let me show them to you here. Here are the 7 reasons: location, neighborhood. Obviously, that is also part of the school district, and we all know some school districts are either more expensive, less expensive, better, or worse than other ones.
Gary, we can't see your screen. I'm not sure if you hit share or if we're supposed to be able to.
Okay, let me see if I know how to do that. Now can you see it?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Thank you.
So location, neighborhood, part of that is school district, as I was just saying. Exterior appeal is, what's the house look like? Is it an odd color? Are there some architectural design flaws, like the wrong size columns? If you've ever seen a bi-level that has 20-foot tall columns and they're only 4 inches around, they look silly. So that's how nice the property looks. The home site is the lot. And you should know that all of these things that we're covering right now can be either positive or negative in the sales process. And so I use this form sometimes as I walk through with a homeowner. And not only will I make notes about these different items, I will also ask the homeowner why they bought the house. And quite frequently, you will find that the new buyer will be buying for the same reason. So that's the reason that you focus on when you're doing advertising of any kind. You put it first in your advertising, not bury it somewhere in the text or later in the text. You want to put that as the main bullet point, so to speak, or the main topic in whatever message you're trying to convey. Condition is the age of the furnace, the age of the roof, the age of the carpet, the age of the air conditioning. And there are only going to be a couple things that the owner has control over, and we're going to get to that next. Staging is, did they take your advice as a realtor? Is the house cleaned out? Is it organized? Did they wash the windows? Did they make sure all the light bulbs work? Did they remove personal pictures and furniture to make it look more open? I personally don't get into staging. My wife did do that as a business, so I didn't have to. I know there are some agents that offer the staging services to clients, and that's fine. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not going to explain staging. Design and floor plan. The simplest explanation here is if you compare a house that was built, let's say in 1910 or 1915 to a house built in 2010 or 2015, you're going to see substantial differences in closet size, kitchen sizes, and our floor plans are more open now. So this could be either a strong positive or negative. Maybe you have an old house that was remodeled and the floor plan becomes a strength, because a 100-year-old house wouldn't be expected to have big closets or an open floor plan. So this could become an advantage in certain situations. And then features are skylights, pools, a lanai, a heated floor in the master bathroom, anything that may not be a standard item, or it could just be a standard item that's been upgraded to let's say a more efficient model, or in some way, the old lights are replaced with newer ones. But the seller can certainly add or change features, but most of the time they do not. Now, my note here at the bottom isn't applicable because right now you can sell anything that you can get a listing signed on. But generally speaking, you have to be in the bottom 20% of the price bracket you're in and the top 20% of condition relative to the other houses on the market. Well, right now, there aren't any other houses on the market, or they aren't on for very long. So some of these things we're talking about are getting lost because the new agents don't need to know them or learn them, because you can sell anything you can list. So this will become more important as and when, and maybe I should say if, we get back to a more normal market. The owner controls two things, and only two things. They control price and condition. So if you go over this list with them up front, when you call them and say, I need to reduce the price, well, that right now, that doesn't apply because you're selling everything. But when you do need to make that phone call, after you make that call a time or two, they're going to say to you, or they may, well, you only ever call me when you want a price reduction. All right, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you control price and condition. Are you willing to go ahead and paint the house like we talked about? Or do you want to reduce the price? Because until price and condition are in balance, houses don't sell in a normal market. And in central PA, which is not Princeton, but in central PA here in Harrisburg, an average market time here used to be 3 to 4 months. Certainly now it's under 30 days. So I use this form in another way. When I am interviewed by a seller, I ask them if they know the 7 reasons. Most people can name 1 or 2, maybe they name 3 or 4, but nobody can name all of them. It takes some thought to figure them all out. But the point you could make was, did your other agent that you're interviewing talk to you about these things? Well, no, why? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, why would you list your home with a realtor that doesn't understand why people buy houses and how to market to those people? So there are some very powerful conversations that can be had and used to your advantage in listing a property, getting a price reduction, or getting repairs made, all by just using this list. Any questions? Norberto, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right. I know Rachel's driving. The rest of this paperwork that I have and can be shared through Nicole is about doing a CMA. I'm not going to cover it today because it wasn't part of what we were originally talking about, but it gives you the step-by-step process for not only doing a CMA, but doing a supply and demand analysis, which again is much more important when houses are not selling well. I can make predictions as to not only how many people will show up at an open house and whether or not it's worth doing the open house, but I can also predict that if it's priced fairly, how long will it take to sell? Now, again, in this market, it doesn't matter as much, but that's what the rest of this paperwork is. I'm happy to go over it with anybody. Rachel's father was an appraiser. He may have this information. He may have deleted it. I don't know. But so this page is some of the numbers that you want to use in determining how one property compares to another. And then there are a couple of forms here that you can put the CMA information on. And you obviously know as agents that you can't do appraisals. You're not licensed to do appraisals. So you want to make sure that they understand that it's a competitive market analysis, and it says so right across the top here. So this whole packet is available. The more you think about these 7 reasons, let me just touch on this, for instance, and this is going to tie into the red flag checklist that I have. But if you have a townhouse with a 1 acre lot, that's not very common. Most people that buy townhouses don't want much to take care of. On the same side of it, if you have a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot 2-story on 1/8 of an acre, that could be a very big problem too, because most of the time there's going to have either an extended family or, at least 3 or 4 more children. And so the home site can be a strong plus or negative. Does it back up to a cemetery? Some people care, some people don't. Does it look over at an industrial complex? Is there light pollution from the shopping center that's across the street? So as you think about these things, they all can be used as topics of conversation with a seller. All right, now let me go on here. The other thing I talked about was Freddie Mac. And I'm going to pick on Norberto because he's the only guy from Princeton. Have you heard of the Freddie Mac House Price Index?
Yes, I have. Basically, by county, it gives an idea as to what the banks are supposed to be giving you for
Well, the Freddie Mac
loans and
price
stuff like that.
well, the price index is by metropolitan area. It's not, it might be a county, but it more likely is a metropolitan area. So clearly Princeton would be one because it's a fairly large area. Here in Harrisburg, it's Harrisburg to Carlisle. So it would be basically anything from Hershey, which is 20 minutes to our east, to Carlisle, which is 20 minutes to our west. And that whole area is lumped into one metropolitan area. And I have a quick example here. The truest form of this, and by the way, appraisers must use this, but they may not use it as their sole way to establish value. It's used only as a supporting role. But let's just say that someone bought a house 4, 5, or 10 years ago, and they made no substantial changes to it. Now, I'm not talking about planting a tree or a bush. They didn't make it bigger. They didn't tear it down, part of it, make it smaller. They didn't put a new kitchen in. Let's say it was a fairly new property, a 10-year-old property. So it's substantially the same as it was when they bought it. In this example, and this is probably Harrisburg, but it doesn't matter, the index for the Harrisburg area was 114.66. 11 years later, it was 137.72. Now that comes from the millions of records that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they both keep records of the mortgages they make. So not refinances, any arm's length transaction. And so every time someone gets a mortgage and there's an appraisal and it's not a sale to a son or daughter for $1, it's not a refinance, they record that. So that appraised value is on file. So this data index becomes more and more accurate because it's like a funnel. It's continually getting bigger and bigger. And that means the margin of error gets smaller and smaller because you have more statistical data entered into this index. So on this example, if this person did not improve the house, the Freddie Mac would say it went up. The difference is 23.06%. You do the division, you divide that change into the original amount. It's a 20.1% difference. That property went up 20% in value in those 11 years. And it's very hard to refute. So you can use this with appraisers if they aren't paying attention to this, but they should be. You can use it with a homeowner who has an unrealistic price expectation. So you can show them exactly what the market says their house is worth. Now, you do need to understand that this process is always about 3 months behind. Okay, they only update it every quarter for the most part. So the indicated value here, what they paid for it back in 2003, plus the increase is, here's the indicated value. Now, in this current market, I would maybe round up to 224, maybe even 225, because we have some continued appreciation in the last 3 months. Its point is, that's going to be plenty. That's going to be higher than the value went up in 3 months, but it does account for the time that this data index is in the past. Okay, so very simple calculation there. Here's a calculation deduction for dated condition versus the comps. You take out the lot value. That's the house. The square footage of the subject. Do that division, you get $70 a square foot. The depreciation for poor condition is 20 to 30%. So these calculations, I can help you with them in the future. Again, Rachel can just ask her dad. But as the market becomes more competitive, more of a buyer's market and less of a seller's market, then knowing all these things are a way to demonstrate your proficiency to a seller. So sometimes you can go into a listing presentation and have no conversation about marketing. None. You can demonstrate enough skill and knowledge with these things that we're talking about, understanding the reasons people buy houses and why you're going to use that in your marketing and how you're going to use that in your marketing. Understanding the value, and especially if like most sellers think their house is worth more than it is. This simple computation right here can bring them back down to the ground, because when you show them this, and you can pull Freddie Mac up on the website, their website, and go to the index, and it's a big table. There are, I think, 360 some marketplaces that they track all across the country. They're in alphabetical order in a spreadsheet. And then you can scroll back from current history. I think they go back into the 1980. I don't know if they go much before 80, maybe 80 or 81. And look at how the values increased in any of the 360 marketplaces all over the country. And it can be very powerful depending on the words that you choose. All right, so you can just Google Freddie Mac metropolitan statistical data. And if you look around a little bit, you'll find the link to the website with the spreadsheet on it. All right, in interest of keeping your attention, I'm going to move on. The next one we're going to talk about is the 1999 syndrome. And I'm not sure if you've seen this one or not. This is a short paper that was written on pricing of property. You can see at the top, Inman had something to do with it. And the bottom line here is that the advice given is do not use 1999, use 200,000 or some other round number. People ignore this today. Everybody's smart enough to know that 199,999 is the same as $200,000. And they make a good point that if you are searching properties, you typically search them in a bracket, 150 to 200 or 150 to 175. So if you use that even number, you'll hit both brackets. You'll hit the bracket below it and the bracket above it. So their example here is use 200. So if they're looking below 200, they'll find it. And if they're looking above 200, they will find it. They also go on to give insight into some of the better known products and their pricing. Godiva chocolates, Neiman Marcus, Ferraris, they're using round numbers. The 1999 days are done. All our consumers today are much better educated, and they perceive this as a gimmick, this 99 stuff as a gimmick. And so between the search groupings and the perception of the consumers, we're now recommending don't use $199.99. So additionally, they also did some studies and found that these numbers, 247 or 244, appear to sell better than 239.9 or 246.9. Go to that next even number. It's more believable. You know, if you're talking with a friend of yours and he wants to buy your bicycle, you don't tell him it's $35.99. You tell him it's $40. So use that in your real estate business to price things that will have a greater effect on the consumer. Other examples here, they'll stand out because nobody else is doing, or very few other people are doing it. And you can go to your model list and see your listing will stand out because most other people are still doing these other numbers. How you write the price matters. Which price seems lower? So fewer digits appears to be a lower number. It's not, but it looks for some reason your eye reads it and your brain perceives it as a lower number. So think about that. And I don't know if this probably has nothing to do with it, but when you enter the numbers in forms today, you're not using commas, you know, you're just like when we do green sheets, you know, you're entering the number this way. Okay. So there are some other examples here. I think it's interesting reading. It's not very long. Here's who came up with all this. All right, so we don't need to do that. So let's go on. Let's go to the red flag checklist. This can be a very useful form when you are listing a property. This form is used by a number of relocation companies. And they ask that the agent that is assigned to the customer, who hopefully will get the listing, fill out this checklist. So if you look through this, when you are walking through the property or driving by before you have your appointment to list the property, all of these things may impact the value or the perceived value. So stigma down here, Pennsylvania has ruled on this, but if someone died in the property, so the Manson murders or any kind of, in a town where Rachel grew up, there was a murder committed, a multi-person murder, I believe, and that house sat vacant for years because it was stigmatized. Pennsylvania, by the way, has said that under state law, that is not a material defect and that it doesn't need to be disclosed. The reality of it is, you want to have to go to court to prove that that's what the law is. You're better off most times just telling people. Major employer leaving, that certainly happens. Some of the gun manufacturers are leaving Connecticut, moving down south or down to Texas. car manufacturing plants have moved south. Um, You know, a big warehouse, a local Amazon warehouse could close and move somewhere else. And that could have, 5, 6, 700 people either needing to sell, or if one's opening, needing to buy. Incomplete subdivision where the builder went under. It's a big problem. The roads may not be finished, as long as the performance bond was posted as required by the municipalities. The municipality has access to the money to finish the roads. But in my area, I can relate several subdivisions where the builder went down, and it created a period of no increase in value for those homeowners until the township worked through what was necessary to complete the roads and the sewer systems and the other things that were undone. So this checklist can be shared with your homeowner and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand you think it's worth X, Y, and Z. Not only does the Metropolitan Statistical Data Index not support that value, as I've just shown you, I want you to look at this list that I've completed. And these are items that are considered to be important by relocation companies. And they are going to counsel their relocation buyer or seller based on this completed list. And you might as well address it right up front. So if there are a number of things checked, the more that's checked on this list, the bigger problem you have selling that house in a typical market. Not in a seller's market, but in a typical market. And especially so, or doubly so, if it's a buyer's market. Let me just point out, synthetic stucco is a good product. It was not installed properly. Some builders had subcontractors that were not certified to install it, and there's moisture problems, and it can be hugely expensive to tear off all or part of a house to fix the water problems behind that drive it. Typically, it's known as drive it. Below grade, undesirable view. Does it look at the sewer treatment plant, or does it look at a warehouse facility where they're moving trailers all night long, like a UPS facility? Poor maintenance of the neighbors. Excess acreage is one. I give you an example of early in my career, there was a ranch home for sale. It was a 1,200 square foot, 30 by 40 ranch house. It sat on 151 acres. It was a problem for the buyer because the bank, they wouldn't accept it because first of all, they couldn't find any comparables, but it's not a typical buyer that wants a little ranch house in the middle of 151 acres. So there are lots of examples for these things, and they may be found in more than one way. Musty odor, everybody walks downstairs, they can smell it. It's one of the first things they comment on if the basement has an odor. Costly improvements in adding little value. Non-conforming style, incomplete construction. So don't be afraid to take this along and fill it out before you actually meet the homeowner face to face. Now, you can also use it if you were presenting an offer in a normal market. You could use this for your buyer, because you could take this and include it as part of your offer and say, here are some of the reasons why we offered what we did. Put it in front of them, black and white. So when you combine this again with the Metropolitan Statistical Data Index calculation, it becomes very hard, solid evidence that's very difficult to refute with most normal people. Now, there are going to be people that can always are going to say, well, I don't believe it. Well, that's your choice, but it's still real. It doesn't mean it doesn't have pertinence in our conversation or in what the value, that the perceived value of the buyer is impacted by these things, whether or not you choose to agree. So once you get into a normal market, this can be used to get a listing, to get a price reduction, to get your offer accepted. There are a number of ways you can use all these forms. Roberto, I'm going to ask you one more time. Any questions?
Yeah, I did want to mention that when you did the report before on the valuation. that there was-
1999?
Yeah, the 1999, 2012, there was a disconnect between the source of the data, the original value of the date of the purchase, and the purchase price, since there, again, these values didn't seem to be normalized. So when you transferred one to the other, there was a kind of a little bit of a disconnect, and that's something that would most likely need to be explained to to whoever's doing the presentation.
Let me
Uh,
go
the-
back to it. Let's show me specifically what you're questioning. This. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, it was in the Freddie Mac one. Hold on.
It was a Freddie Mac.
I got it. All right, so which line here are you questioning?
Well, basically, if you look at the as of Freddie Mac price index, you're using the index to be able to give you a reference as to what the price should be.
No. It's not what the price should be. It's a weighted average based on all the historical data of the mortgages made. So this number is their baseline for that point in time. Then this number is what the weighted average is for this point in time. And you can apply this to any price property. So it could be 100, it could be 500.
I got that. I got that.
Okay.
Okay, so now you take this, now when you use that same price on line number 5 and you multiply that by 21% or whatever, which gives you the 38,000, that basically gives you a difference on the normalized value of the 114, which may not necessarily relate to the 184,500.
Well, okay, I think, see, here's the original house value down here. Here's where we started on this example. We started at 175. Oh, I'm sorry, this one shows 184.5. I apologize. So that
so
was
let me stop you there for a moment. Okay, so that 114.66 really relates to that purchase price because it's a normalized value.
no,
So
it doesn't. It's a weighted average of all the mortgages that were made in that metropolitan area in that month of that year. It applies to all price ranges.
right, and I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that number is a reference. It's an index, okay, which really gives you it's a relative value to what's going on in the marketplace, because there was a whole bunch of purchase prices. But what I was trying to mention is that 37,084, which is the number there, has not been normalized with respect to the purchase price.
We're assuming, because it's used, when they bought the house for 184.5, if it got a mortgage, it wasn't a transfer between a husband and a spouse or a child. It wasn't a distressed, it wasn't an REO, it wasn't a foreclosure, it wasn't a sheriff's sale. If this was a normal sale and it got a mortgage, this value is substantiated by that. And then,
Right. And let me stop you right there. Okay, so if we were to take the normal the index number, which we found to be the difference of 21%, the purchase price, which I'm assuming is in September of 2003, you would multiply that number by 20.1% to give you the differential in the price, and then you would be able to in effect say, well, if when we put those together, this is what the indicated value would be, and this would be a normalized value.
I guess I'm sorry, because that's what we've done here. That's what, this is the process as the appraisers use it. You take the difference in the two, and this could be a smaller number than this number if there was depreciation. But you take the difference.
I got it. I got that. Okay. But when you use that same 114.66 times 20.1, which is what you do in line 5, that gives you 37,084. Okay.
Yep. So you add that to the purchase price, and that tells you the value today.
Right. But that's again, the 114.66 times 20.1% would be.
No, you're not doing that. This is what you're doing is you're finding the difference in the weighted averages, and then you're applying that to the basis average to find the percentage of difference. You multiply the percentage of difference times the original purchase price to come up with the number today.
And no, and again, I don't mean to, if you take the 3784 and you divide it by 20.1, I believe that you'll see.
Wait a minute, why would you do that?
Saying that because I believe that in line 5, that 114.66 should actually be 184,500.
Okay, you're not following the process then. So for the folks that are maybe listening to this as it's recorded, they can't see the screen. I suggest that you go to the Freddie Mac website yourself and read through their explanation of this. Now, it's not as concise as this, but Norberto, I think that may help you understand it in a way that right now I'm not able to convey to you. So
I think I got it. It's just, again, the one, like if you take 2 times 114, that's 228, okay, or 229, and that's not 37 or so, or the digits don't amount. But yet, if you did the 20%, the 37 does correspond to the original purchase price. So I think that this is just like when I saw the example that you were doing, I said, wait a minute, these numbers just, there's no connect. But in reality, it's just that the exhibit, as you prepared it, is somewhat misleading because again, there's in line 5, there's a mistake, and it's the calculation is correct. It's just that the wrong number was being used as the first initial multiplier.
Right. I understand where you are with that. Okay. But again, still, please feel free to go to the website. There might be some other things that you can learn. All right, let me jump to the last item on my list, which is team advertising. You may not be on a team. I'm going to cover it quickly just because Nicole is going to record this and she may want to play this part of it for other people. And you work in an office, somebody might have a question that you can answer. You might appear to have something that they don't, or know something that they don't. Let me find it here. Now this also, please know that this is different between, it may be different in Pennsylvania than it is in New Jersey. Understand that we are not identical in every case. All right. So advertising and team advertising are both covered here. So the basics of this are in Pennsylvania, they prefer that the primary team captain, team leader, team organizer, team founder, that their name be used as the team. So that's why they want the Benjamin Franklin team, not the Franklin team. It's not specific enough. And they also have to register that name so that it is legal. It has to be shown on your license or you can't use it. So it has to be submitted to the Pennsylvania State Commission and it has to be approved by them. This next example down here If you look through it, it looks very similar, except that Sally Jordan is not on this acceptable one. The very simple reason is that she is not licensed. Only licensed people, regardless of what they do in the team, if they aren't licensed, they can't be used in the advertising. So you might have 4 salespeople and 6 admins, but if the admins aren't licensed, you can't say you have a 10-person team. And as always, you must have the company name and phone number. The company name and phone number must be of equal or greater predominance than the agent's name. It does not matter whose name goes first or last. The logos do not count. They are not mentioned in the law. It must be the company name and the company phone number. And then, and only then, can you add anybody else's name or phone number. Those things must appear in emails. They must appear on car signs. They must appear on real estate signs, any kind of advertising on Facebook. Anything the public sees has to follow these guidelines. All right, this one, they just said John T. He didn't put out his full name. You gotta have your full name and or legally acceptable nickname. Team may only be licensees of the same company. I just talked to you about the predominance. Advertising cannot be false, misleading, or deceptive. You cannot appear to make yourself appear to be more important than the brokerage that you work for. Even if your team does 99% of the business and there's one other agent who doesn't do much, you are not more important than the brokerage under the eyes of Pennsylvania law. And you can see that this was submitted by a former real estate, I believe he was president at one time, but he was also on the real estate commission. So that covers team advertising. And I believe I have one other piece. This is directly from the Real Estate Commission's website. You can find it by looking around online. And you can see that the code numbers are here. If you want to look it up, it makes it a little easier to find it. Real Estate Commission permits a licensee to advertise using a nickname as long as it is registered with commission. A nickname can't be used for last name. All documents must be signed using their legal name, not their nickname. Again, a little bit more on team advertising. The team name should not be a fictitious name. Can't be the Blue Sky team or the Smooth Sailing team. They want it to be an individual so that basically someone can be held responsible when the stuff isn't right, if it is found not to be right or used in some deceptive way. On all advertisements except business cards, team members should be listed using the team member's licensed or commissioned registered nickname. Unlicensed individuals I just covered, no office staff in pictures. So you can't play that game. You can't take a picture of your posse of 12 when you only have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 licensees. So even though their names might not appear, you can't have them in the picture. They should all be from the same company, blah, 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 blah. So any questions on advertising? All right, any other questions on any other parts of this? All right, Nicole, I'm going to wrap this up early. I think everybody enjoys a Zoom meeting that doesn't last as long as they thought it was.
Sounds good. Did you have a question, Mamta? I see you took yourself off mute.
I can't see her. But Norberto, thank you for your input and letting me ask you a few questions. All of this content can be made available through Nicole. I think I've sent it to her already, but I can send it again. She can post it on the company site and forward it to you. And I'll be happy to have any more in-depth conversations about any parts of this if you'd like.
Thank you very much. I thought that the material you presented was actually very, very good and gives a good guidance for good discussions with the clients, irrespective of whether you're representing a buyer or a seller. I believe that comparative list, that the last list of that you did for the relo was exceptional in the sense that everything is relative and subjective and allows you to really frame the price that you're looking to represent, irrespective of whether you're representing a buyer or a seller. So that was extremely helpful. And again, this is where talking to an appraiser and whatnot in terms of what the relative values are would be extremely helpful as well. Thank you.
All of these things, well, thank you for your comment. Please know that when you put all these things together, you can get a listing or take a listing from any other agent, regardless of their reputation in the community. If you can prove that you have knowledge that other people don't, you can win, whether that's listing, buying, selling, price reduction, whatever. So thank you for recognizing that. And there are additional ways that these things can be used. So feel free to experiment and find a way to tie them into whatever it is that you present when you're in front of people. All right, Nicole, I'm out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. I really appreciate it. And thank
Have
you
a great
to
day,
everybody who came today.
Thank you.